All righty. Next, we'll welcome to the stage for her presentation Jane Bullen. Jane leads the water use survey team as a data analyst at the Texas Water Development Board, which is title appropriate for her presentation, estimating water use and groundwater pumping in Texas through the water use survey. So with that, we'll turn the stage over. Jane, it's yours.
Thank you all for sticking around through the last of the day today. Today, I'm going to talk to you about estimating water use and our groundwater pumping through the water use survey. My name is Jane Bullen again. I am a data analyst with TWDB, specifically in the water planning area. And I am not a hydrogeologist or engineer, so I am learning a lot about groundwater, but this is going to be a very high-level groundwater talk today. So just an overview of my presentation today. I'll talk about the history of the water use survey and who we survey, and the data collected from the survey, just to give background for that. And then I'll briefly talk about how we develop our annual water use estimates. And then we'll go into how the water use survey data is utilized. And then finally, to get to the visual part of this, we'll talk about where we can see the water use survey data. So the annual water use survey is, we collect water use data from public water systems and industrial facilities in Texas. We are required to collect this data under Texas Water Code section 16.012M, essentially saying that we are required to survey entities that use groundwater and surface water for municipal, industrial, power generation, or mining purposes. And this is all for the use of long-term water supply planning. So just to give a brief history of how the water use survey came to be, it started in 1955 before TWDB was even an agency. The predecessor agency began surveying just self-supplied groundwater pumping. And then in 1971 is when we started surveying all water source types, so groundwater, surface water, and effluent. And in 1984 is when the water use survey became an annual survey, so we have to complete the survey every year. And then in 2001 is when it became mandatory again by that Texas Water Code. And in 2011, we launched the online survey application. And in 2014 was when the LUX system was created. This is the water loss, use, and conservation plan reporting to support data that is required by SB 181. This is conservation data. So this whole application essentially streamlines a lot of these required data reporting for TWDB. And then in 2015, we started collecting retail water data by end use type, and then also reuse water data by use type. So the timeline of the water use survey work, as I mentioned, it's an annual cycle. So it's very regimented. In January, the survey is open to the public on January 1st, or the first working day of January, of course. And then the survey is due March 1st. And the survey online application actually closes July 1st to let the latecomers in. But before that, around the spring is when we develop our annual water use estimates. So just for perspective, the survey is a year behind the current year, so it's 2025. We are currently in the middle of QCing our 2024 data that we collected this year. And for our annual water use estimates, that's about 2 years behind the current year. So we actually, 2 weeks ago, just published our 2023 annual water use estimates. And then in the summer, as I mentioned, so right now my team, we're all QCing the 2024 survey data, and then come in the fall, around October through December, we do it all again. We prep for the new year. We have to do a mail out, and we have to do a lot of research for industrial facilities that we might not survey, and then it starts all over again. So who do we survey? We survey 7,300 systems. We get about a 78% return rate, so about 78% of the systems that we survey, they actually respond and give us data. About 4,700 of them are community public water systems, and about 2,600 are industrial facilities. And we are not surveying irrigation, livestock, or domestic exempt users, or oil and gas. So these use categories are estimated by us and a couple other teams at TWDB. So just to briefly give a quick overview of all the data that we collect in the survey, for both municipal and industrial users, we take their monthly intake volumes by water source. So this is either by purchased water or if you pump your own water, so that's self-supplied. And then we have them report also by the water type and where that water was sourced from. So for example, if your system pumps groundwater, you would report that as self-supplied groundwater, and we ask that you report either by the specific well that it's pumped from, or if you don't know the well, you can report by aquifer as well. And we also ask a couple other questions with the intake data, whether it's metered or estimated, and if the water is saline or brackish. And we also collect water sales information. So if your system would sell water to another public water system, we require that they report that. And then also they would report to selling to industrial facilities. Any industrial facility that purchases more than 10 million gallons of water per year needs to be reported in the water use survey. And similar to intakes, we also require to report by the water source and also the buyer who purchased that water. So if you combine our water sales information with our intake information where you can report who you purchased from, it creates the seller-buyer transaction where you can kind of see both what the sellers are reporting, selling to a facility, and what you're reporting, purchasing from that seller. So that helps with data validation. I'll get into that a little later. And then we also collect retail connections and volumes. This is obviously for public water systems only. We're required to collect for single-family and multifamily homes, so that's residential category. Institutional, so this includes any government buildings that use water, so schools, nursing homes, prisons, for example. Any commercial water use, so this is any offices or restaurants water use. Also in the retail section, we ask that they report industrial water use as well, including anything under 10 million gallons and over 10 million gallons. So this is any manufacturing or mining facilities, and then also any agricultural retail water sold. And we do collect some other pertinent data. Those three slides were kind of the major data that we collect, but we collect region, county, basin data. If you're familiar with the state water plan, that's really pertinent for that. So we collect the source and where the water is used, since those can be different. So we have that information. And then this is kind of a summary of the differences with the data that we collect between public water systems and industrial facilities. So for both, we collect water intake, sales, and that geographic information that I mentioned. But there are some differences between them. So for industrial facilities, we collect that North American Industrial Classification System code, the NEX code, which helps our planners plan for water use by manufacturing. In developing those estimates. And then on the public water system side, we also collect, on top of the retail water, we collect population information for that public water system, and that helps our PSA team get that population estimated. So the data is collected in two ways still. We have, as I mentioned, the online survey. It's kind of probably a little small to see in the back, but there's a snippet of how our online survey looks, the intakes page. We also still collect PDF and paper surveys. We get about 700 a year still that people either send snail mail or most of the time they'll send PDFs, a fillable PDF to our email, and we have to enter that data for them. We keep that option because there's still water systems out there that don't have access to internet and all that, so do it the old-fashioned way, and it keeps us busy during the year. So most people do prefer the online survey just because it streamlines that other data collection, but we do have that paper option as well. just to briefly go over the QC that we do, we assess 3-year trends when we look at our data and try to find any outliers with that. As I mentioned with the sales, we have that buyer-seller reported data. So this is a snippet. Again, it might be hard to see in the back, but we have a dashboard, which I'll get to a little later, that this is an example of the city of Houston. They obviously sell a lot of water. So we can see here what the city of Houston reported selling to water systems and then what those other smaller cities reported purchasing from them. So this helps a lot when we're validating data, so we know if we need to reach out to anyone, maybe there's a data error, maybe there's a meter error. So that is very useful to have. And typical QA/QC, we identify outliers. We check the gallons per capita daily, or GPCD, for public water systems that we survey. If it's a high or low GPCD, it might indicate that there's something wrong with the data reported, so we'll check that. And then for any people that do not submit a survey for their utility or industrial system, we don't want to assume that they didn't use water for that year. So we actually take the most recent year that they reported and kind of roll that over into the current year if they don't report, and that's their estimated water use. So that was all of our surveyed portion of how we develop our water use estimates. But as I mentioned before, we have a lot that we need to estimate for. So those are the what I listed before, that we don't survey the non-community PWS or domestic exempt users. We don't survey oil and gas or irrigation or livestock. So we have to estimate all of these categories to create our water use summary estimates. And the water use survey team gets a lot of help with the estimates. We do some of them, but most of it comes from other teams at TWDB. If you're interested in how these are estimated, we have information on our website available that goes through all of it. I didn't memorize all of the estimation methods because it's a lot of math, but the information is on our website if you're interested in that. So as I said, all of that information produces the Texas Water Use Summary Estimates. This goes into the State Water Plan, as I'll mention in a few minutes. The summary estimates, here I'll also go into our data dashboard a little later and our maps, but we just released our 2023 estimates a couple weeks ago, so that was very exciting. And these are just some ways to view the 2023 estimates that I'll go over. So the data is utilized, first of all, in our regional and state water plan. Seems like a lot of people here are familiar with that, which is great. But if you didn't know, the water use survey is the building blocks for the regional and state water planning. We collect all this historical data and then pass it off to a lot of smart people that can project it out and calculate the demand and the supply. But the survey is how we get that historical basis that is used for water planning. And then we also support any groundwater availability models, data needs. It's not perfect now. We are still trying to fill in the gaps needed and improve data efforts on both ends with our GAM team, but we do have groundwater pumping by aquifer and then the water use type. So a lot of our data is used to support those efforts as well. And then something really important for planning purposes is that GPCD, so that's the per person water use per day. And that kind of is a good, GPCD is a good way to monitor conservation programs or for funding prioritization for TWDB. And so for this example, this is a report that we have available. It's our water user group GPCD report. All of this data came from the water use survey, so I used San Antonio as the example here. We collect their population, intake, sales, data that produces the net use, and then we can use all of that data to calculate that GPCD of 132. And then the graph below was created by some of our planners, and they use GPCD data to track how well conservation programs are going, if they're hitting their target GPCDs, and all of that. So that all starts from the water use survey. And we've also just supported a lot of other research and media, legislative support. These are all of the ideas I could think of that I've sent data to folks for different research that they're doing. You can assess water use patterns by that geographic zones and climatic zones using our geographic information that we collect. You can look at water use by industrial sector. If you remember, we collect those next codes that will define, industrial use. And you can also look at either residential use, commercial use, seasonal use, because we have that monthly intake. You can see, the seasonality of water use for a system, for example. So there's plenty of other ways to use our data, but these are just a few. Okay, now we'll get to the fun part of the visualizations. Where can we see this data? So I kept a laundry list of all of our reports available here with a link. So if y'all want to download these slides at a later time, you at least have that information there. So we have plenty of reports available, different summarized reports. Some of them are more raw data that I would encourage everyone to just look through. We also have data dashboards and maps. There's a list of them there. That's good for exploratory data analysis. So I usually recommend people look at our dashboards first and then go to our reports just to kind of get a feel for all of the data we collect. And as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of data requests. So if you just email us, and if you're looking for something specific or a specific range of years and you can't find it, we might have it. So, email us and we can try our best to help you out. So this is just an example of one of the reports that we have. This is our main statewide water use estimate report. I'm sorry if it's difficult to see, but this is for 2023, our report by region. It shows the population and then each of those water use categories. And then if you look to your right, we have it broken down by, each category broken down by water source as well. So if you're only interested in groundwater, you can just pull the groundwater from this report. All reports have filters to them. So for this specific one, it's filtered by the year. Other ones that you can filter by county or region or anything. And then you can also select it to download if you click on that save icon. So you can just download it to a CSV or an Excel file to get that data yourself. And what I thought would be of specific interest here, we also have summary groundwater pumpage reports. This one is one of our older ones. So this is a report that goes back to 1984. We have data back till then, and it is our groundwater use by county and aquifer. We do have another groundwater pumpage report that's a little more detailed as well, but I selected this one just to show. And this one's difficult to see as well, but I just wanted to highlight that we do have more raw data available rather than that summarized data. That top report is our intake report. So we have detailed intake reports for municipal and industrial systems, and it goes back to 1955 when we started surveying for that groundwater pumping. So we have a lot of data, specifically in that report. And this one is more raw data. It has that county used and basin used, and also the source county and basin, again, since those could be different. It has the aquifer information, and then it also has the monthly intakes. So if you're looking for more raw data or if you're looking for it by a specific system, you can look at one of those reports. And we also have our agricultural irrigation estimate reports, and that goes back to 1985. So that's available, and it's by county and crop, and it just shows the water use there. All right, and we'll get into the more fun part, which is our data dashboards. We developed all of these ourselves, and so this first one is our Texas Water Use Estimates dashboard I showed at the beginning. So you can see we have it broken down on that top graph, water use by category, so you can kind of see, visualize the different water use, and then below it we have it by source as well. So if you were interested in looking at it, how much groundwater, surface water, or reuse water we're using, we have that as well. And then on the top, we have filters for this as well. So for this example, I filtered the dashboard by Bexar County, since we're in San Antonio, and I was interested in looking at mining and the trends for mining over the past 20 years. And so you can do some exploratory data analysis just using our dashboards. And I want to mention, you don't have to guesstimate on what the water use is. If you hover over with your cursor, it'll show you all of that information as well. And then we also have a groundwater pumping estimates dashboard similar to our water use dashboard. For this one, I filtered, this is similar to our water use summary estimates dashboard. I filtered again by Bexar County and was interested in the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer and what use categories are being used for that specific county and aquifer split. So you can kind of explore it that way and looking at the different aquifers. But then we also have this really cool dashboard that my team made where you can look at each aquifer. It's quite small because it's listing all the aquifers, and you can filter on top by year, or if you are just interested in a specific water use category. For example, if you only wanted to look at municipal use and which aquifers are most being used for municipal purposes, you can filter that out. And if you wanted to look at all the data, obviously the Ogallala is used a lot for irrigation, so that kind of makes the graph go crazy. You can zoom in and get a better look at each aquifer that you're interested in using that x-axis. And then the last data dashboard I'll go over is our public water system dashboard. So if you're a GCD and you are interested in a specific utility and how they're reporting or how they're using their water, we have that available as well. So this first one, I selected SAWS again for my example, and you can see we have the intake, sales, and the net use, which is your intake minus your sales, on the top graph, and on the bottom you can see the population that they've reported in the water use survey for the back to 2010. And then in this table, we also have that buyer-seller transaction table here that I showed in a couple slides ago. And we also have retail data in this dashboard. So on the top, you can see our connections reported for SAWS, and below is the volumes that they reported for each of that retail category. And just to test my own claim that you can pull our data from the reports, I did exactly that, and I created this dashboard for SAWS. So this is not one that we have available, but it probably will be soon. I'll probably upload it. But I did this for this presentation just to make sure that I was telling the truth, that you can pull our data from our reports and make a really cool dashboard with it. Here I was just trying to show, we have a report that shows all of our retail water information, so I pulled that in and just defined each category, showed the population, and you can see, you know, the percent of retail volumes by each category in that pie graph. And then I also calculated in my dashboard residential GPCD and normal GPCD, and so you can kind of compare the two and see how SAWS does with their residential per person use versus overall per person use. So that's just an example of what you could do with our reports. And we also have maps available. These are two of my favorite, but we have 4 other ones that you can look on our website. These are just really great just to get like a wide view of water use in Texas. The one on your left is water use by source. So the top is that where we see groundwater used the most, and then surface water is in blue and reuse in purple. And then to the right, I've already shown this map, but this one is also one of my favorites. You can really just visualize how water is being used around the state just by throwing it on a map like this. So I really like these maps. My teammate did a really good job making these. So just to summarize everything, the Water Use Survey is the only program that provides a comprehensive view of water use in Texas, starting in the 1960s. The Texas Water Use Summary Estimates are vital for water planning and conservation efforts, and water use survey data and visualizations can be used for a wide range of research and programs, as I just went through. And of course, there's continued efforts to improve our data collection and visualization and dissemination. So happy to chat about, what we can do better or what your needs are. We want this data to be used by all of y'all. So we want to make it helpful. So we are very open to feedback for all of this. And I did just want to acknowledge the water use survey team. So as I mentioned, it's 7,300 surveys we do every year. It's a 4-person team. We are constantly working, and they do a really great job. We do a lot of customer service too, just during the survey open, just to help people submit their surveys. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then also acknowledge our other teams at TWDB, the Projections and Socioeconomic Analysis team and the Agricultural Water Conservation team. They both help us develop our summary estimates. My contact information's up there if you want to chat now or in the future. And you can also contact the Water Use Survey team because all of my teammates are also very capable of answering your questions. So I will take any now if anyone has it, or we can chat later, or you all can email us and get talking. So thank you.